Welcome to Super Cool, a show about climate innovation, business, and how the future is being built. I'm your host, Josh Dorfman. Mark Andreessen famously said software is eating the world. Every company, whatever it made or sold, had to become a software company or get left behind. That turned out to be pretty much true. Now everyone is saying the same thing about AI. Seyed Madaeni, co-founder and CEO of Verse, probably agrees. But he's also saying something else. Something that has not fully landed yet in most boardrooms. If you're a Fortune 500 company, a hyperscaler, or any large enterprise, where electricity is a significant piece of operating costs, and for some companies that can be 30 or 40% of OpEx, you also have to become a power company. Because electricity is not just a line item anymore. It's a strategic variable. The problem is that most large companies were never really built to manage it this way. The grid is the most sophisticated non-linear system ever built by humans. And if your core business is making food, running a chemical plant, or training AI models, the odds that you have deep in-house expertise in electricity markets, grid operators, interconnection queues, utility tariffs, and real-time energy risk management are basically zero. For a long time, companies outsourced much of this work to consultants. But consultants can't give you a live view of what you're spending across hundreds of contracts and thousands of sites. They can't tell you in real time whether you're paying the right invoice. And they can't manage a battery on a second-by-second basis. Verse builds the software that changes that. Its platform, Aria, gives hyperscalers and anyone spending north of $50 million a year on electricity a unified view of their energy portfolio. Contracts, utility bills, power purchase agreements, cost forecasts, and risk positions, all of it in one place so companies can understand what they're using, what they're paying for, where the risk is, and what they can do about it. Increasingly, Verse is also helping those same customers get access to more power faster. And that's where data centers come in. Hundreds of data center projects are sitting in utility interconnection queues right now, waiting years for approvals, grid upgrades, transformers, transmission capacity, and generation that may not arrive for half a decade, if not more. One estimate puts the annual revenue sitting idle in those queues at $500 billion a year. Verse's new product, Dispatch Intelligence, gives data center developers a way to come online years faster, without waiting on a utility and without slowing down their operations. The fastest and cheapest path to that outcome also happens to be clean energy. You can wait years for a gas turbine, or you can start building solar and storage now. Seyed has spent his entire career in power markets, grid software, and large-scale batteries. He started at PG&E, working in California's electricity markets. He went to Tesla, where he helped build AutoBidder, the software Tesla uses to optimize large energy storage assets in wholesale power markets. He became CEO of AMS, sold that company to Fluence, and served as Fluence's chief digital officer. So when Seyed says he's never seen load growth projections like what he's seeing right now, that carries weight. This morning, Verse announced a $54 million Series B led by Bessemer Ventures, with participation from Google Ventures, NVIDIA, Norskin VC, and others. We normally release the podcast on Wednesday mornings. This week, we're releasing on Thursday because we wanted to bring you this news as it broke. Here's my conversation with Seyed. Seyed, welcome to Super Cool.
Well, thank you for having me, and it's super cool to be here.
There is so much to get into. I'm really appreciative that you're here with us today. I want to start, though, with something that you say very explicitly on your website, on the Verse website, which you don't often encounter. And that is, we're creating the tools that make the energy transition faster, smarter, and more fun. When I saw the more fun, I was like, really? Is this fun? What do y'all mean by that? So anyway, with that, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and how do we get to more fun? How does that enter into the value proposition?
Well, fun has been part of my life since early childhood. So whatever we do needs to be fun. And trust me, there's a lot of fun stuff about what we do. But in a nutshell, Verse is a company or a platform, a software company that's really making some headway on a couple of key areas If you look at the landscape of enterprises, they're consuming a lot of electricity. Depending on who you are, you might be a data center, or it might be a chemical company or a manufacturing facility. Electricity and power is becoming a strategic variable because costs are going up. It's extremely volatile. And when you look at the market that's been serving this segment, it's pretty fragmented and bespoke. So our vision was to really create the tools and the products that help organizations, large enterprises, to better control their electricity spend, and for many have access to power even faster than they hope, which data centers fall in that category. But essentially our approach is being industry agnostic, because at the end of the day, power is homogeneous and everybody's using the same electricity and most likely will be paying the same price.
Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is one of these areas of industry that is hidden from most people. And so when I was getting ready to talk to you and I'm doing my research and I'm listening to some other interviews you've given over the last couple of years, and you're talking about price stability to huge buyers of energy, bring down their energy, control how much energy they're using potentially if you can, cut that, help get to decarbonization, all these things. And I'm listening and I'm like, why is that a problem? Why wouldn't a well-resourced corporation know exactly how much energy it's using? It just boggles the mind to think that's actually a really, really, really big deal. That's actually an issue, because you would just assume you're Procter & Gamble. Of course, you got a whole team. Of course you do this stuff. You're Danone, you're Coca-Cola, you're whomever. Or you're a hyperscaler. And I know hyperscalers are more resourced, but it just struck me as I was, digging in. I was like, I just didn't realize the extent of this problem. And then when you talk about the fact that 1/6 of all greenhouse gas emissions come from industrial uses or big corporates, huge.
Yeah, it's absolutely huge. And depending on what type of company you are and the DNA, your visibility on spend might vary. There are organizations that have good visibility, but visibility is the first step. What do you do about it? How do you control the costs? And to the extent decarbonization is your objective, how do you do it? That's where it gets extremely hairy. We're talking about electricity that's being pumped through the power grid, the most sophisticated nonlinear system ever created by humankind before the age of computers. So if you're producing coffee, the odds you are well versed in the world of electricity markets and grid operators and utilities and interconnections and managing your risk and your spend and your decarbonization, all of that becomes a super hairy problem, which a lot of organizations have decided to outsource. And traditionally, these outsourcing avenues have been consultants. But can consultants manage batteries on a second-by-second basis to reduce your electricity costs and make you connect to the grid faster? No. So you need tools, you need software. And we're the team that's being backed by folks like Bessemer and GV and Cotu and NVIDIA, who are bringing that change to the market.
Tell us a little bit about your background, because I don't know if this is the culmination of your life's work, but this is clearly the next logical step in your life's work, because you've been focused on power and energy markets pretty much for your whole career, as I understand.
Most importantly, batteries, energy storage systems. So my career has always been focused on software for energy, power grids, electricity markets. I actually started my career right around the street here at a utility called Pacific Gas and Electric. I was part of the department called Short-Term Electric Supply, which was essentially managing PG&E's portfolio in the California ISO market. So I started putting together tools and a little bit of the software to automate that. So this is market trading, and made my way to Tesla. Ultimately was part of the team that built together the first version of AutoBidder, which was essentially taking large energy storage assets and optimizing them in wholesale markets. Then went out, became the CEO of AMS and sold that business to Fluence, did an IPO with them. I was the chief digital officer there. And we scaled really the Fluence Mosaic platform, which all of that was increasing the sellers of power, their economic viability through software and renewables and conventional assets. But what I realized, me and my co-founder, Matt, the bigger portion of the market are the buyers. Who's there to serve them? And because of geopolitical tensions, because of climate change events, the transition and the volatility that you're seeing in power markets are becoming more and more problematic. So our vision was to start a company that's going to solve that with different tools that we have to essentially put them in the right place. And that's a big journey for us. So we took the leap of faith. We're now on the buyer side. We're helping them navigate from managing their contracts to forecasting their spend, all the way towards optimizing real energy storage systems on site to reduce their energy costs. So it's a holistic approach, which is fun and exciting. So to your earlier question, what's fun about it? I guess this stuff.
All right, awesome. So we're going to pick that, we're going to kind of distill that to understand the various product offerings that Verse is offering. But what led you, did you have a sense coming out of college or out of your graduate studies or something that this was like what you wanted to do?
I mean, I've studied power system engineering, and then my master's was in power system engineering, electricity market design. I did a PhD in applied math and optimization in electricity markets, and I took a chapter of my PhD thesis and contributed towards product like Tesla Autobidder or Fluence Mosaic. So this has been my bread and butter all my career. So I'm one of those people that, their actual PhD work is applied in their actual profession, and I'm just fortunate for that. So I've been studying this for a while. And plus, running companies is not necessarily a thing that you learn in a PhD program. So that comes into practice in just a long night and hours.
Where did that initial spark come from, though, for you? Because that's such a clear through line for so many years. Like, why? Why were you interested?
I would say I also love finance and markets and trading and stuff like that. And if you look at power markets, they're the absolute right blend of engineering systems and financial markets. No other market is like that. Take any market like a commodities market, coffee. There's a buyer and a seller, and the price is determined, coffee gets shipped. In electricity markets, there's a power generator that is selling and an entity that's buying. Just because you like that transaction, it's not going to go through. Now it needs to be modeled at the power grid level to see if it's feasible, if it's reliable. So you're perfectly blending engineering and financial markets together. And then once you have these new asset classes like energy storage, plus the power of AI and algorithms, there's the boom. Now, I shouldn't say when I was 2 years old in the park dreaming about power grids and financial markets, but over time, I've really built a passion around physical and financial systems, and this is the right blend.
Wow, that's really cool. All right, let's talk about Verse. Give us the journey. I know you started the company just a few years ago. You had a good seed round. I think that was led by Cotu, and then it sounded like maybe GV or someone else super awesome led your Series A. I know.
GV.
Right, Google Ventures, and now we're on to Series B. Congratulations, which we're also going to talk about today. So very exciting news. You have this really exceptional background. You've attracted many world-class investors to the mission and to back your company. Coming out of the gate, and I know you're now, like we'll talk about today, you've expanded the offering of what you're going to do with the Series B. But what do you do for those corporate buyers? Like, talk us through the various things that you're able to offer them.
Yeah, so if you look at any other good AI SaaS company, you don't go to a customer and say, I have this product and it's cool and you should buy it. That's absolutely wrong. And when we came to start Verse, we have tremendous, me and my team, especially my team, tremendous amount of experience on running batteries on the grid and building software for batteries. But you don't go knock on doors and say batteries are cool and please buy it. You got to start with the pain points. And what are the pain points? Speaking to many corporates, hundreds of them, we realize you can summarize it into a couple of key simple things. They want fast, cheap, clean power. And the clean may be questionable for some. And I don't want to make it political, but fast and cheap is always there. For many organizations, luckily, they also like it to be clean. So when you take that, if you're in the world of solving that problem, what can you do? On the fast part, which gets into speed to power, and a lot of the recent raise that we've done focuses on that. But in terms of cheap, we're not a utility at the end of the day. Like we're not a regulated entity. What we can do is basically optimize a lot of things that the organization does to reduce power spend. Let me just give you a simple example. Our platform is called Aria. It has multiple modules and products. One of the products that we're actively selling, and we have a lot of Fortune 500s on it, it's called Portfolio Insights. What it is, it's contract management. You might be an organization that have 100 PPAs. How do they settle every month? Are you paying the right invoices? How do you budget for it? How do you think about accruals? How do you do risk management around it? So even if you shave off 2 or 3% off of that with just pure software, it adds up, and it adds up tremendously. So the products that we started with were extremely tactical, easy to deploy, and the outcomes were extremely transparent and measurable. And that's why we got a lot of traction. But then when it comes to the going back to the cheaper, faster, and cleaner power, when it comes to cheaper, if you really want to shave off your electricity costs, how are you paying your electricity costs? Well, there's demand charges and transmission charges, and you have campuses. That's why you need the machinery. And that machinery are called batteries. So you need to be deploying batteries. And what happens next? How do you run them on a second-by-second basis? While considering your entire portfolio, that's the flagship product that we just launched, which is called Dispatch Intelligence, which I'm happy to talk about now, which is getting a lot of traction with hyperscalers.
That's awesome. We've had companies on this show, like a company called Butterfly, I don't know if you know, Buddrfly. They'll go to a Popeyes or a Sonic or a KFC and they'll be like, hey, you've got all this energy in this restaurant, right? It's pretty dense in terms of how much energy you're using. We're going to upgrade all your equipment for free because we're going to actually take a big chunk of that delta, right? When we give you more energy efficient or whatever, or refrigeration, like we're going to save a lot of money. We're going to take a big piece, you'll get a little piece, and then we're going to bring AI to this, and then we're actually going to run a virtual power plant, and we're going to like connect this thing to the grid, and we're going to also like make some money because we're going to sell some energy back. But they're managing the whole thing for that one store and building their own network. What it sounds to me like you, in many respects, are creating the tools to enable whatever Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company or hyperscaler. You're actually enabling them to do a lot of this stuff themselves in terms of the software, the AI. How are we going to manage our energy in real time? What are we going to actually give back to the grid? What are we going to use ourselves? It's sort of like they're able to build their own kind of ecosystem for power management using the diverse tools that you give to them, where otherwise they would have no visibility. And with AI, they're actually able to do this in real time or very close to it, which you just could never do before.
Very good point. So for us, a target customer is anybody who spends north of $50 million on power at a portfolio level. So we don't go store by store. We don't have that level of visibility. And that's great. Some people do it, and it's a lot of hairy work. And I really appreciate the work that they do. But for us, it's an aggregate level. You're spending $1 billion on power. Okay, where are the leaks? How can we help you? And plus, you need 500 megawatts more to power your data center campuses. So what are you going to do there? Those are the type of problems we solve. And you're absolutely right. We create the ecosystem for them to be in the driver's seat. And a lot of the times when we talk about battery deployments, I mean, when I was at Tesla, Elon at the time tweeted he wanted the world's biggest battery in South Australia in 100 days where it's for free. And a lot of us went down there. That was a 100 megawatt battery. We're talking about a couple of hundred megawatts on each site. So you can see the scale of this. And to actually run these things on a second-by-second basis with all the underlying algorithms to decide what you need to be doing for the utility, for the power markets, for the host customer. And then our other products are looking at your entire portfolio, looking at your risk positions, looking at all your contracts, and just executing everything on your behalf. That's essentially what we do and what we sell.
Yeah, that's amazing. Let's talk about the new product, at least what you're rolling out in terms of your software combined with storage and the problems you're solving for data centers, for hyperscalers. When you talk about all of these projects, all these data centers, the interconnection queue.
Correct.
Like all of these renewable energy products, everything's lined up, waiting just to connect to the grid. And that sounds totally, like it sounds completely ridiculous that you could have, you know, gigawatts and gigawatts of clean energy that could do incredible good. You've got all these data centers like lined up, ready to go. We're trying to move into this, you know, into this future, and they just simply like can't connect. If you're not in the industry,
it's crazy.
You're
it's
like,
crazy.
What? How can this be like the modern world that we live in today?
The power grid is old. And so let me, maybe if it's helpful, let me break down that problem to explain what's going on and what's the solution and ultimately how we can help. So if you're a data center, let's talk about the load side. And the same problem exists on the generation side as well. Just because you have a 300 megawatt wind farm, they're not going to connect it tomorrow. So the same problem, and we'll explain what the problems are. So let's say you're a 100 megawatt data center, and for you, going online quicker basically dictates, you know, your superiority in the AI race. So AI is compute and compute is power. It's a big portion of your OpEx, but training these models are extremely hefty when it comes to power usage. So speed to power is what we're seeing as an independent, software company, that how these hyperscalers are competing. Everybody's doubling down on CapEx for data centers and AI training, and you need power for that. And the power doesn't exist. So when you are, as a nominal example, let's say you're connecting a 100 megawatt data center, and by the way, there's 700 of them in the interconnection queue. And each of those data centers, if you do rough math, generates around $700 million of revenue per year. Now, some of these projects might be duplicative. Not everybody's revenue is the same. But if you add that up, that's $500 billion sitting down in interconnection queue, which as a nation, if we want to have AI superiority compared to China, we should do better. So that's the size of the problem. That's why we've managed to attract top-notch investors, because trust me, we don't have a TAM problem here. We just have an execution problem. Okay, so you have a 100 megawatt data center. You want to take it to the grid. The utility says you can't do it. And it'll boil down to two things. One is I might not just have enough generation capacity, meaning that there's not enough energy. Or two, it can be more interesting. I may or may not have the energy, but I don't have the means to bring it down to your location, because power needs to travel through transformers and transmission lines and distribution centers and ultimately get to your data center. So what do I do as a utility? Well, I need to study it. I need to actually upgrade my infrastructure. I may need to build a transmission line. I may need to build a power asset to serve that. And for that, I need to do the designs. I need to get regulatory approval to see if that even makes sense. And please come back 7 years from now. So that's the thing. Now, part of it is true, and it all goes down to how agile utilities are. That's a separate conversation. But the underlying problem that there is not enough power to get it to your location, that's true. Now, if SpaceX was solving that problem, it would be different than like a utility, in my view. But anyway, the problem exists. So as a result, in that 100 megawatt example, when you go to the interconnection queue, you're basically saying, I'm a 100 megawatt load and I'm firm, and 24/7, you need to serve me. So that's different than a stadium where you turn on the lights every time there's a game. So it's extremely variable. But the thing that puts the most stress on the grid is just a firm block power. It's not flexible. You can't change it. It is what it is. That will trigger the most amount of studies, and that will require the most amount of investments to really serve. As an industry, we've now evolved to concepts of what we call speed to power, which is, what if you go to the utility and you say, you know what, that 100 megawatt block of power, it's not always true. I can be at zero for a couple of hours a day. I can actually make my load variable. I can shape and form it however you want me to shape and form it. Well, that basically alleviates a lot of these concerns. And this is really not a new concept. Back in 2012, I was in CAISO proceedings on what we call non-wires alternatives, meaning that don't invest in wires. There are some alternatives, and I'll explain what that is. But really, the end product you want to have is flexibility on your consumption. You can go down at a speed of light. You can go back up at a speed of light, and you can shape and form your load consumption. Okay, if you take that to the utility, you're not going to stay 7 years in the queue, but you might be in the queue for a year. So essentially, you pull it forward a couple of years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, depending on location. If you manage to achieve that, that's a big outcome for the industry. But how do you achieve it? So that's the next question. How do you make this load flexible? The solution, the fastest, the cheapest, and many times the cleanest, is to deploy big batteries, stationary storage, lithium-ion solutions, like the ones that Tesla has, like the Megapacks, and Fluence has, and there are other companies as well. So once you deploy this energy storage system, and these are on-site, not at, if you're in Virginia, you're not doing it in Texas, you're doing it on-site. So next to your data center, you have these big batteries, and then you can also pair them with solar to alleviate the lack of energy capacity. And then once you have that battery and it's deployed and the project is up and running and our platform sits on top, every second we control the output of the battery and the solar. It could be other technologies as well, like gas, but solar and storage is the quickest. What we'll do is on a second by second, when we dispatch these batteries, the utility doesn't see that 100 megawatt load anymore. It sees 0, it sees 5, it sees 6. So you now are a much smaller load. And then plus, your data center operations are seamless. You're still consuming that amount of power, but you're getting it on site. So you would assume the complexity of the algorithms that need to be involved here, not just by controlling these assets, but also sometimes taking that flexibility and monetizing them in electricity markets, which creates even more cost-saving opportunities. So not only you have speed to power, not only you can create economic value, but in many cases you can be clean as well. And if you look at the economic equation here, speed to power, the opportunity cost was $500 billion. What's a couple of solar panels and some batteries? So that's really what we're seeing in the market. And we as a company have now essentially put our money where our mouth is, which was always our vision, to bring all of that wealth of experience that the team has on running big batteries and doing it for enterprises and creating value. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I appreciate the way you're laying it out. It's very logical. When you talk about having these really big batteries, maybe it's Fluence, maybe it's Tesla. I know there's other companies operating in that space as well, and we share that same view. We're really enamored of batteries. When people ask me now, young people like, hey, I want to get into like clean tech or climate tech, what should I do? And I'm like, well, if you look at the companies that are getting funded, and if you look at where the money's flowing, just go work for like a battery company, because it's extraordinary, right? Can you explain that piece a little bit more when you said that when this solution is deployed and the Verse system is controlling that battery and controlling the load and controlling what the grid sees, you said the grid might see, I don't know, 0 megawatts or 1 megawatt or 2 megawatts. Can you explain that dynamic? Is that because it's real time as opposed to like this 100 megawatt?
Yeah. Very, very simple example. Let's say you have a charged up battery. There's 2 hours of energy in the tank, and it's a 100 megawatt system. You have the data center that's drawing 100 megawatts from the grid. So these systems are what we call behind the meter, meaning on site. When the battery starts discharging 100 megawatts, so you're getting 100 megawatts, presumably you want 100 megawatts data center. If it's getting that from the battery, then it's getting 0 from the grid. So essentially it's like you turned off the data center. And from a utilities perspective, they had 50 hours of a year that they had problems to getting you power. During those 50 hours, just make sure you discharge the battery. We're good. Now, it's way more complicated than that, but I'm just trying to...
Yeah, I got it. And so the dynamic that we often hear about is it's those couple of hours per year or 50 hours per year, or when the grid's going to be kind of overloaded or hit peak, and they're going to say, hey, we need you data center, you whatever, to dial it back. Basically what you're saying is like that's never going to be an issue because we're never even going to come close, like ever, if we're on site and we're kind of behind the meter.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's just
the only trick here is your battery only has probably 2 to 4 hours of energy, and those 30 hours of the year, the utility is not going to advertise when those hours are. They will impose high tariffs on you. So you need to predict, hopefully using AI algorithms, to when those hours are, and make sure your batteries are charged up and you discharge during those hours, because otherwise, not only the financial penalties are high, but you might be ending up not having power at your data center. So you could assume that's why we use a lot of algorithms to predict those hours and when that's going to happen.
Got it. Okay. You've announced this raise this morning. This is your Series B. I think it's 50 some odd $1 million. Is that
54?
Right?
Yeah.
54. So what's the state of the company today? Like how many employees? Who are you working with?
Right now today, we're around 55 people. We're growing, but we also have this AI first mentality. We don't want to overhire and downsize. Every person that comes in, we have a nice framework of how AI could be leveraged on the coding side and on the business side. And then if we really need more people, we'll make a decision and expand. But given the workload that we have, we are expanding. So if folks are listening and you're interested to get into this world, please send an email, info@verse.inc. But essentially, we're in the process of onboarding 100 plus sites on our dispatch intelligence product, which is managing these batteries. And depending on the projects, the timelines are stiff. So we're really heads down and execution and delivering. Plus, we're also getting new customers and really scaling there. But it's one of those times that the stars are aligned. You don't really need to convince people you need power tomorrow. It's really how quickly can we do our jobs and how quickly can the data center go online, and hopefully with a mindset of a fast, cheap, clean power.
One of the things that I think about a lot, because I see on this show, almost every week, the companies that we talk to on Supercool who are usually in this box where they're deployed, commercial scale, cutting carbon, making money, helping their customers either make money or save money. And very often there's this element to, in some way, enhancing quality of life in some way. Not always, but the value prop is so strong. And increasingly, what we have seen over the last year is almost every company I talk to, AI is at the core of what they do. I'll give you an example. I was talking to this company called Hoofprint Biome. They're funded by Breakthrough Energy Ventures. They've come up with a way to mitigate cow burps, methane, and they found the enzyme that goes, in the rumen will then convert that energy back into like more milk or just more weight, more calories, so that it's actually more productive for the farmer. Amazing. When I talked to that woman who started the company like 2-3 years ago, she basically said, we took 20 years of research and condensed it into 1 year to find the enzyme, right? Like, you couldn't do this without AI. She's like, we are an AI company. I talked to this company called Augmenta that's doing spatial AI for construction, and the guy says to me, he's like, look, when architects design a building and they hand it to the engineer and then the engineer hands it to the contractor, what the contractor gets is not constructible because you only have so much room in a wall. And like when you have all these systems that need to go into the wall, the plumbing, the energy, the fire, you almost have to start over, and you get a third of materials just end up in the landfill. Like 1 out of every 4 buildings is going to the landfill. You only solve that with AI, right? And that's what I mean kind of say when I was saying in the beginning, where it's like, I didn't know there was a problem in construction. I didn't know there was this huge problem in how corporations manage their energy or have visibility into their energy, that it's so complex that in order to like do this, in a way that drives stability and cost reduction and continuous operations and, for many companies, decarbonization, you just don't know from the outside like how complex these things are. But AI is so core to the solutions today. And then you talk about this opportunity cost of around $500 billion to the math that we've been discussing today. And I guess the question floating around for me is when people are like, oh, AI, is it a bubble? It's like, I'm listening to you talk and it's like not even close, at least this product that you're bringing to market, your company's built on the fact.
Yeah. And we also are helping manufacturing facilities. The same batteries goes on university campuses, manufacturing sites, chemical companies. But I should admit, the hyperscalers need it more because for a lot of these other organizations, it's not the speed to connection. They're already connected. They want to use these batteries to draw down, reduce costs. Yeah, I think like devil is in the details, right? So on a day-to-day basis, there's no real need to advertise or put an AI next to your company because if you're really not using AI, odds are you're not a company. Everybody's using it. And really the art and the science combines of how you're leveraging it. My practical experience, let's say if you're thinking about business metrics, dashboarding, doing better FP&A for your company, a lot of this stuff AI can do. Even software engineering, like we use Cloud Code and everybody has tokens and they're actually boosting their productivity with AI. That's real. But then some of the core problems like building algorithms for predicting when the grid is going to be stressed, AI doesn't do a good job. Or running big mathematical optimization problems in our industry we call boundary conditions, and like AI is not there. So really the art and the science is leveraging AI in areas that are no-brainers, and in areas that you think you're going to be on a hamster wheel of just like running around in circles and try to fit it using AI, just you don't need to use it. So being extremely selective is going to be very key. But we also are now living in a world that the same AI tools that we have access to, our customers have access to as well. So if you really want to have a competitive moat and your value proposition The bar now is, the AI platforms they use. Can you go above that? And a lot of the times here in San Francisco, people say, SaaS is dead, AI is the future. Like, if you put all of that aside, is previously the company had a pain point and they had a willingness to pay against that pain point. Now the company, same problem, they have a pain point, plus they have AI tools, and based on that, they'll determine their willingness to pay. So companies that will understand that ecosystem and are fast and agile and can leverage AI in a way that normal companies can't, then you have a value proposition. So to me, it's, call it a bubble, not a bubble. It's just part of every company's DNA. And if you're not using it, you're probably going to be left behind.
Let me ask you something else. I heard you allude to this last year in an interview, and it really got me thinking. There was the view a number of years ago that every company is now a software company, and if you're not a software company, no matter what else you're doing, you're going to die, right? And then it's like, and now we're having this conversation, it's like, okay, every company, like you have to be an AI company, and if you're not an AI company, you're going to be left behind. But one of the things you said last year, and in light of this conversation we're having today, that got me thinking, is every company, every major company, are they also now, do they have to become a power company? Do they have to have the core competence in this area?
Pretty much. Electricity and energy used to be a line item. Now it's a strategic conversation at the board level. It used to be managed by not so much senior execs. Now it's managed by CFOs. We saw what happened with the Strait of Hormuz and gas prices going up and electricity prices shocking up because gas is marginal. We saw what happened when Russia invaded Ukraine and what happened to energy markets in Europe. And if 30-40% is your OpEx is tied to electricity, that's no longer a line item. That is a strategic conversation. And you need to use power as an operating leverage. So we are seeing in the market that a lot of these companies, they're hiring a lot of talent. So people who understand power, 11 years ago, I would say tough luck finding a job. Nowadays, they're a commodity. They're extremely hard to find. So yes, absolutely. Every company needs to build a backbone. Not if you're a mom and pop shop and you're paying utility, but if above 3%, 5% of your OpEx is on energy, or you're spending 50, 100 million above, then yes, absolutely, you need to become a power shop.
And it really sounds like it's only going one way. I've also heard you talk about the fact just how, and I imagine for you, having been in this industry for so long, I think it was last year, maybe it happened again this year too, where you talked about the projection for load growth like doubled.
It's crazy. I've never seen it. I've never seen it. 10 years ago, we thought the EV boom is going to be real. And then all of a sudden, like everybody knew data center, like cloud computing is going to grow. But when OpenAI dropped the bomb on November of 2022 with ChatGPT, that's where the frenzy started. And load growth is extremely, extremely high. Like there is not enough capacity. Unless companies like us or others are successful in solving the speed to power problem, I don't think these data centers are going to come online.
In April, the U.S. Energy Information Agency talked about, so this was looking from, I think, March 26th through February 27th, was projecting out, even with this administration, it was basically saying, essentially 90+% of all the new energy is going to be clean. Storage is included in that number, right? Like of all the new energy generation. And so I just wonder, when you talk about fast, cheap, clean, where is clean in that mix? I get that not every company is maybe prioritizing, or at least as much as they may have been, a few years ago. But is it just also still a reality that if you're going to put power on the grid and do it fast, I know you alluded to how quickly you can do solar or storage, that this is really like your path? And I asked too because last year we had this great guy from Siemens Energy on who oversaw their grid technologies business, I want to say. He's on their board. And he was just like, look, you can't get a turbine. Like, I don't even know what everyone's talking about. Like the queue to get a natural gas turbine is like
100%.
Like get in line. Like you can announce all the natural gas turbine power plants you want to do behind the. Like,
that's exactly my view. Yep.
Right. So like, I'm curious what your view on that is.
Yeah, I mean, I would say in the early 2010s when the PPA market started picking up steam and people actually voluntarily went out and signed PPAs and put steel in the ground for wind farms. And a lot of the times they were not in the money, but they were doing it for a decarbonization objective. Fast forward today, $500 billion, it's lying on the ground in interconnection queues. To your example, and I've actually been using that example, you can wait 5 years in the queue to get a gas turbine, or you can put solar storage in the next couple of months. So the economic solution happens to be clean. And this is where things scale. Because if we're just trying to scale renewable technology with subsidies and political disputes between different parties, it's not scalable. But now it's a solution that is scalable. Companies might not be thinking about the decarbonization impact, but it's driving the business value. Now, keep in mind, there will be some gas. There will be maybe some nuclear. I mean, a lot of companies are moving towards that direction. But if you have a problem that you need to solve tomorrow, solar and storage is the solution.
And to me, it's like, that's better, right? Like, yeah.
It's better. I love it.
Like, who cares?
I mean,
what the motivation?
we can talk about, like, why does this tax credit have a sunset and make it political and go to Congress and debate it? One party likes this, one party likes that. But if something is truly economic and the CFO approves because it's in the money, that's where things happen. And we're just like, I'm so excited for this, actually. That's the cool thing about it. You don't talk about politics, you talk about your dollars.
Yeah. So when you say we want fast, cheap, and clean, it's like, yeah, okay, great. Or never mind clean, we just want fast and cheap. It's like, well, guess what? Your way to get there is clean energy. Whatever your views on it are, like, that's what's going to serve the needs of your business.
Yeah, and just if there's even a slightest misunderstanding on this, look at China. They are the world's most advanced in terms of deploying renewables. I don't think they're doing it for climate purposes. Maybe they are. I don't know. But it's the most economic, and they know it. And it's the way to get detangled from fossil fuels, which can become volatile. Right now, we're agnostic. We can run anything. But what we see in our portfolio is mostly solar and storage. We are seeing some gas, but we haven't seen that as the scale of the hype that you see in the market and the headlines around it.
Syed, I really appreciate you spending the time today, and congrats again.
It was super cool, and hopefully it was fun for you too.
Educational and fun. I mean, there you go. You know, we did the whole thing. So
amazing.
Yeah, congrats again. Really excited for you. Excited to follow.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening. If you're enjoying Super Cool and appreciate our conversations that merge climate, innovation, and business, please take a moment to subscribe and leave us a review. It's the best way you can help the show reach other future-forward decision makers who would benefit from these conversations too. See you next time.